Maybe we can speak just a little bit about backcasting and how we will use it on Congress, because yeah, it's one of the main parts what we're using as a method on the Congress and why we also called it future state and why we're starting from the future, not just from this point.
Backcasting are quite well known, a little bit niche, if you like. It's become a little bit more popular recently in terms of a writing strategy, if you like, for these kinds of science fiction. It's also something that has a background in participatory theatre, and it also has relevance and a background to scenario planning and used in companies and a sort of workshopping sense. And it, as this sort of slide, if you like, shows, the first bit is the bit we've been talking about imagining the future. So you start by imagining the future that you want to build, right? You also might imagine other aspects of that future, like dystopian aspects of that future, potential problems with that future. But you start with that. You start imagining the future, right? And then you describe it. You literally write the script. Now you can do that with personas and user journeys. You can talk about scenes, but you imagine that future. And then what you want to do is jump all the way back to the present, right? After you've kind of workshopped that future, you want to jump back. You want to ground that future in the present. So you want to talk about what technologies, what communities, what energies, what budgets. That's a kind of documentary genre. It's like document the present. What do you have? What resources do you have? And then you write a series of steps or scenes. It's a bit like time travel from that present to the future that you've imagined. And that whole journey, which you can also branch out, you can have some setbacks and some disasters, some revolutions and things like that on that journey, is basically this backcasting loop, right? Imagine the future, ground yourself in the present, and then come up with a realistic series of steps from the present that takes you to that future. And then when you have that whole story, if you like, you can then get creative about how you tell it. Do you start in the present? Do you start in the future? Do you jump back? Do you move around in various places? And you can kind of cherry pick that world that you've created, create the particular story that you're interested in. And out of that world, you can have multiple stories, right? So you can see this, if you look at it on the screen here, as kind of like a Terminator kind of movie. So you've got this kind of dystopian future. Classically in science fiction, it's more fun to tell the dystopian story, right? But now with a kind of multiverse type take, you can look at that future from the kind of utopian and dystopian and indeed other perspectives. And then that gives you a more robust set of stories from which to plan a realistic path from here to the future you consciously want to design. But basically, yeah, you've got the time travel back to the present. Can we actually work with this real project, this real community in Ukraine, this city that we are building, and can we see how that goes? And then picture that in the future, this particular scientist or this particular coder who's in the present, we can take that reality and that documentary footage, and specifically we're taking some of the reality we've got in terms of the reality of what we've got in terms of network state technology, the code bases we have, the open source projects we have, the communities that are working on it, the eco-villages, the pop-up cities, that whole movement. And we're saying, what's the future of that movement? And then how do we get from that present and we can work with documentary footage in this storytelling, which we can put into the final world.